Hello buddy, and welcome to the last episode of this project. This is the Stories of Berrysville video, and I know I said that I wanted to do this video and another one which just has the music and cinematics that shows off the old town, but I figured as we had like a bunch of cinematics in the last episode, episode 11, which was the final like real episode, I decided that it would sort of be a little bit repetitive and too much to do another video sort of like that, because there were like 3.5 minutes of just cinematics showing off the whole town in the last episode. So if you want to see that, make sure to go back and watch that. It's in the end of that video. But of course there will be a lot of cinematics in this one as well, just a little bit older and more specific, showing off like specific buildings, because we'll be talking about the stories for those buildings. And I'll also include some cinematics now, which you're probably seeing on screen and in the end as well. So hopefully that will be fine. But yeah, I also wanted to mention this, that the save game is going to be up when this video comes up. So make sure to go down in the description and go and take a look for yourself in Berrysville. Because I obviously wanted to release this because this is a very community-based project. With like all of the stories being made, and I took a lot of input from all the people that have watched this, so definitely wanted to share it. So make sure to go ahead and take a look at everything we've been building for this project for yourself. And yeah, so feel free to play there, and like if you want to record videos or whatever in Berrysville, continue it yourself. Just make sure to like sort of link to my channel, or at least say that this this project started on my channel, something like that. But yeah, so hopefully you enjoyed this save game, and I think we're gonna get into all of these stories now. So what I'm going to do is just take all these story segments from every episode and put them after each other in today's video, so you can just get a better idea of like everything, or well, every story for this project, and sort of make them link up a little bit better. So that's the plan for this video. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this series, and if you did, make sure to drop a like on this video. So yeah, this will be the final video of Berrysville. Hope you enjoyed this project. Until next time, have a great day and enjoy this video. Bearsville is a town that's inspired by places along Route 66 in Texas. The main focus has been to capture the feeling of a present town that was bustling in the 30s, 40s and 50s when the Route 66 was used, but now is suffering from the lack of traffic going through the town. The absence of traffic on the route made some of the motels, gas stations and stores go out of business. Now the town has a lot of old abandoned motels, gas stations and stores, and the town is barely staying alive. The motel was a popular stop for years until the interstate passed through Berrysville. Even after the interstate, people who regularly passed through town would still stop in on their overnighters. In 1972, however, there was a call to the local police. When they arrived, they found a man floating in the pool. Wilson Morgan was dead of a gunshot wound. He'd been a regular visitor to the motel, as he was a hardware salesman that regularly traveled Route 66. From the date of finding of his body, business declined rapidly, as all the other regular guests of the motel began to speculate that the motel was haunted, especially room 5 and the area of the pool. When the regular guests stopped coming, there was a limited attraction to travelers of the interstate, and the motel fell into disuse and eventually ruin. The abandoned lot had been the first and for a long time the only gas station in Bearsville. John Richards and his wife Mabel ran the Bearsville One Stop, which was both a service station and a convenience store. It was a 2-story building that had their home on the 2nd floor, above the garage and the store. Being open 24 hours per day was a big attraction before such work schedules became commonplace. They had quite a successful business for decades, but when the Exxon and Shell stations came to town, they were forced out of business, unable to compete with huge corporations. After Jim White dropped out of college, he took control of his dad's gas station after he unfortunately passed away. He thought that it was an easy way to make money without much effort. Unfortunately, one evening the gas station had been victim of a massive robbery where all the gas had been pumped out of the station, leaving poor Jim with nothing. As soon as he found out, he immediately phoned the police, but they couldn't take any action as no CCTV recordings were available for evidence. Unfortunately, due to these circumstances, Jim became bankrupt and ditched the gas station to visit his grandmother outside the village, who fortunately had found a job for him. He immediately left Bearsville, thus abandoning the gas station. This place was a very famous motel to get your night's rest in. Some famous figures came to this motel, like the governor of Texas. The owner, Harry Bush, devoted his life to running his motel, but sadly one night he died from a heart attack in his home. He was 73, and since no one wanted to take up the mantle for the motel, it was overrun by weeds and trash. One of his relatives, James Bush, tried to reopen the motel. After a week though, he also died from a heart attack. The rest of the town started to believe that the motel is cursed by the ghost of Harry Bush. After that, no one tried to reopen the motel again. The First Baptist Church of Berrysville was established in 1895 by some of the earliest settlers of the area. The original congregation of 6 or 7 families offered their homes as gathering places for potlucks and Sunday service for several years before acquiring the funds and manpower necessary to build a chapel. The first chapel was a white wooden one-room building with a bell tower and a small adjacent cemetery. It was built in 1903 just south of downtown in a much simpler style than the ornate Catholic Methodist churches in town. This chapel was used and adored by the congregation for several decades, who took pride in its simplicity. However, it was struck by lightning in the middle of the night during a thunderstorm in 1966 and quickly burned to the ground before the volunteer fire department could get to it. The distraught congregation held mass the following Sunday in the lawn in front of the charred rubble, where Pastor John infamously said in a sermon that this was a sign from God that he wants a bigger and better house, which upset many of the church members who had no qualms with the simple church building. The new church was quickly built in its current site in a year later, but Pastor John was quickly accused of embezzling some of the fundraising money collected to build this new church. He was pressured to retire and suddenly left town shortly after its opening. His whereabouts are still unknown, though it is rumored that he fled to New Mexico with a mistress. Today, the church includes a daycare, a Sunday school, and a small event hall dedicated to members and followers of the church. The Bearsville Trailer Park, also known unofficially by locals as Barts Ville, is the proud home of all of about 9 residents. The land was originally purchased by Bart McHugh, who was planning on building a large home there to live with his wife. However, shortly after the purchase, his wife divorced him, taking most of the money with her. Now, very poor, he decided to scrap his large plans for a simple trailer home. To gain some income, he started selling parts of his land to others who needed a place to put their trailer home. Eventually, he gained enough money through sales to purchase the recently foreclosed ready-to-roll tire shop across the street. He eventually reopened it under the same name. However, after selling just tires for 6 months, he decided to expand its services to include repair and scrap. He used the empty lot behind the shop to place his scrapped cars. After about 6 years of successful business, he sold his own trailer home and built a small house behind his shop. Now he lives there with his 2 cats, living off a fairly modest income, still trying to sell his last plot of land in his trailer park. The truck wash was a significant sign of the prosperity of Bearsville. It was originally built by a Belarusian trucker named Alex Varshkov in the 1960s. The truck stop offered truckers auto service, a car wash, and even a lounge for them. But the stop was took over by his son when Alex unfortunately was killed in a truck accident. However, when the interstate bypassed the town, it was considered garbage and business slowed down. But this oddly helped the truck stop because there were 2 other truck washes that closed due to the lack of customers that sat on the abandoned side of town. As days turned into decades, the end is now near. As of May 9, 2005, Alex's son committed suicide due to a faulty drug. His brother then took over, but sadly the brother has not enough money. The truck wash is seeing its last days as of a new truck stop was proposed in 2010 near the highway entrance. Business is slowing and rumors emerged that the owner is planning to file for Chapter 7 bankruptcy and liquidate the entire stop. In early 1942, a small training airfield was built for the rapidly expanding US Army Air Corps just a few months after the Pearl Harbor attack. The airfield was named after Ira Clarence Eaker, a general of the United States Army Air Forces during World War II. The area around the airfield was expanded with buildings. From that time until the late 1960s, it was used by various Air Force squadrons, training their flying capabilities. In the late 1960s, the Air Force sold the airfield and nearby grounds to the local township called Berrysville, which in turn sold off pieces of land to farmers and other entrepreneurs. For a while, the airfield was used by local farmers for crop dusting, but hard times and subsequent low income resulted in the airfield being abandoned. Myles Huntington used to own the farm, and he was a businessman that sold bread for Bearsville. One day, his son came back from school when Myles suffered a stroke. He had a rare disease and was rushed to Dallas, where doctors told him he had 20 days left to live, or that is what they thought. Myles secretly was paid for giving money to swindlers and made up the story to trick people. When police stormed into the farm, a long battle was fought, Myles versus the police. Meanwhile, TV stations got the battle live. Myles was eventually arrested and is now in North Dakota working as a rancher. His wife took over the farm and runs Marie Farms, a big producer of bread in North Texas. The A. Marsh Finan hardware store is located on Main Street in downtown Bearsville, across the side street from the town's fire department and kitty corner from the First Skyline Bank. Today it is a struggling business operated by Mrs. Agatha Finan, the wife of the founder. As you can see from the storefront, there's not much going on in the shop, but back in 1972, A. Marsh Finan ran a thriving business. That was, if you remember, the year that the hardware salesman Wilson Morgan was found dead of a gunshot wound floating in the pool at a local motel. The investigation into the murder took many months, but eventually it was determined that Wilson Morgan had no fixed residence. In fact, he had lived as a regular in many motels up and down Route 66 as he traveled from town to town on his sales route. In each town, as it turned out, he had a lady friend, and most of them were connected in some way to his hardware contacts. In Bearsville, Wilson Morgan's girl was none other than Marshall Finan's daughter, Elizabeth. At the time, Beth was 17 years old and about to finish with high honors from Bearsville High School. Everyone in town believed she had high expectations of attending university in New Toulouse on her way to achieving a degree in the medical field. As the case eventually unfolded, police determined that when Marshall Finan had gone to make a delivery of replacement pool pump parts to Jackson Smithers, the owner of the motel, he had stumbled across Wilson and Beth frolicking together in the motel pool. There had been an argument between Wilson and Marshall, with Marshall accusing Wilson of corrupting his baby girl, Beth, before Marshall finally left, dragging his crying and screaming daughter to his car to drive her home. Sometime later that night, he returned to the motel and shot Wilson dead in the pool. During the investigation, because no home or family of Wilson Morgan could be found, his body was kept in the morgue, and after the long months of investigation, Jackson Smithers Motel had already fallen into deep decline. Since there was little hope of reviving the motel business, it was he who had given permission for the authorities to bury Wilson Morgan's earthly remains by the pool, thinking that the curiosity of the grave marker might attract business to the growing renown of the haunted motel. Jackson Smithers Motel is now defunct, obviously. Marshall Finan's hardware business still exists but struggles today under Agatha's care. Beth, meanwhile, did eventually graduate from university and still resides in New Toulouse with her husband and 2 adult daughters, who have followed in her footsteps professionally, and where she is now director of research and development for a major science contractor for the US government. The Bearsville Volunteer Fire Station was created in the late 90s because the old historic one closed due to faulty construction. There's nothing special about it, but its history is golden. In 2000, a military jet crashed on the outskirts of town, striking a farmer pasture, setting it ablaze. The fire department only had 5 men and 2 fire trucks. The fire grew to the point where a small township outside of Bearsville named Lance River caught ablaze. After 3 days, the fire was put out and the damage was excessive. Lance River and northern Bearsville was severely burnt. You can find burned sheds all around North Bearsville, signifying the bravery of the firefighters and the sad tragic loss of 4 people. This only brought Bearsville together and they rebuilt. However, Lance River wasn't so lucky and the whole entire town was abandoned. Lance River's population either moved to Bearsville or beyond, or was just killed in the fire. What's left is the roads resembling the town's layout and an abandoned farmstead. The first bank in Bearsville was opened by a young banker in the Wild West times. The bank became essential when oil was discovered in the hills nearby as the town needed a place to store the profit. During the Great Depression, the bank hit hard times and was forced to shut down. In the early 21st century, First Skyline got the permits and built a modern bank on the former lands. The owner Richard Deininger and his wife Maureen Deininger opened the property back 3 years after Route 66 was completed in 1929 when he was 30 after he had spent a decade and a half working at the Pittsburgh Steel Company. The two had gotten married on April 28, 1924. The gas station was built by Richard and 1 year later opened the Deininger family gas station. It had a rookie start due to the Depression, but they had 4 decades of great business even after Eisenhower signed in the Federal Interstate Highway Act. If anything, it improved their business, but after the oil embargo of '73, their business started a slow but soon to become a rapid decline. Due to gas prices going up, they had to raise prices and somehow escaped bankruptcy in '74 after the Shell company moved in. They made it through the rest of the '70s and even recovered a little bit, but the final major blow was after the economic crisis of the '80s, and they were also priced out by the Shell station. Sadly, their business's fate was sealed, and in 1990, after 60 years of business, they had to close the gas station. The owner and his wife were in the early 90s and both soon moved to Oconomowoc in Wisconsin in '92, and they lived out their days. Unfortunately, his wife went first at 98 years old. She was born on July 20, 1902 and died on August 13, 2000. He lined on until the age of 105. He was born on July 31, 1900 and died on November 23, 2005. The two of them had a great life and they lived out their days together. The gas station had given them and many other people who traveled along Route 66 the fuel to create many years of memories. During the Great Depression, the Higgins family used it as a way to store other people's vehicles to make a little money on the side to keep them afloat in life. They had 5 kids and 2 twin dogs to care for, so money was greatly needed. After the Great Depression ended a couple months later and only 2 other people had used the lot, they decided to close the lot for good. The remaining vehicles from the Great Depression, the families either couldn't pay the fee to get them back or the owner/owners had passed away. A few years later, the school district bought the lot to store their school buses. They didn't have time to move the old vehicles when the city revoked the lots and the things on the lot due to not paying the bills for 5 months. It has been abandoned ever since and the city has never had a purpose for it or the money to renovate it or maybe turn it into something new. The McDonalds of Bearsville was never meant to be built. John Harriola, mayor of Bearsville, wanted McDonald's to be built in the town after eating some in his hometown of Austin. The town council turned him down, saying no to McDonald's because of the recent growth of Jack Pearl's Chicken and other mom-and-pop restaurants. Unfortunately, Harriola accused the members of the town council for the robbery of Jim White's gas station in 1989 when they were young. After the accusing, Harriola had the council arrested, but they all fled just in time. Harriola, the real robber of White's gas station, put his own supporters and aides into the council, where they voted yes to McDonald's. Protesters tried to stop the McDonald's being built, but it was too late. It remains, and this ended the growth of Jack Pearl's Chicken. Miss Martha Dixon was a World War II veteran, and after returning home, she started her little Route 66 motel. Martha had a booming business, but others were also taking note of this location. Cartel members bought her motel out as a safe house for all their illegal dealings, but kept some parts of the motel running as usual. In 1974, the Mexican cartel moved a big load through the border and into this motel building. But the US Marshals, FBI, and local police had a standoff with the cartel in the parking lot near a gray van. A gunfight occurred and many police and cartel members were shot, including some people at the motel. After the gunfight, locals say the building is a center of crime and poverty. There's also a rumor that there is still petty crimes, but also some serious. Later, the Bearsville Town Council bought out the building, but now it has been sold back to some shady people. The Route 66 motel was once a booming, prosperous motel that many would trust to stay at overnight, but now it was rotten, broken down, and now another revealing revelation. A place to go if you want to be stabbed, robbed, or confronted by homeless people. Chips isn't a type of brand of chips, but rather a small snack bar in Berrysville. This building dates all the way back before the Cold War, where school kids would leave school and head to the place and get a snack or even a soda. This place was seen as a happy place, and how it survived for 70 years is truly unknown. The little bar expanded an indoor area and its new architecture in the 70s, which benefited the store as more and more people came there. Even the mayor of Dallas County visited the place in the late 70s. when Route 66 closed and was replaced with the highway. This didn't affect the business as of it prospering on a small town goodness. However, the snack bar took a blow during 2010 when a drunk man was shot in the leg when he was threatening the store manager with a knife, but he made a full recovery and business resumed to normal. To this day, this small snack bar is popular among the town and many memories to the oldest of residents.